Hello and welcome back to PHP Basics. My name is Sean. I got a request from this guy asking how to build an email confirmation into a new user registration form. Now this opens up a whole new can of worms that we haven't talked about before, and is one of the reasons why I created a separate video on how to send email from localhost using a Yahoo or Gmail account. And you can find that video right here, or you can click on the link in the description. So we all know how this works. A user comes to a new site and you register a username, a password, and you put in an email address. You hit register and then the website sends you a verification email to authenticate whether it's a valid email address or not. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. Now I've already taken the time to set up a small form here. I've got a registration page and I've also got a login page. To take a look at the database itself, I have a database called test and a table called accounts. And in accounts I have the primary key, which is the unique identifier, just called ID. And this is an auto increment field. We can see here we have a username, password, email, V key, which is going to be our actual verification key, whether the account is verified or not, and by default it is 0, so it is not. And then we're also going to mark the create date with the current timestamp. Inside of my registration.php file, I have a standard form with a method of post and an action of nothing, which means we're going to process all of this on the same page. I have a username text field with the name U, password, which is a password field with the name P. Repeat password is going to be P2, and then email address, which is going to be the email type. Essentially, this is a client-sided validation to verify that you've actually got the correct email format. Its name is just going to be E, and these are all required fields. Okay, so typically what I do on every page is I establish an error variable, and by default this is just going to be null. But what that allows me to do is copy and display that on the page, and we'll just echo out error, and anything that goes wrong in our form, we're going to display that on the page below. After the form is submitted, we will process that and check to see if the username is a certain length of characters, to see if the passwords match, things like that. And if they don't, then we will display those error messages through this variable here. Okay, so first we need to check if is set post submit, which just means has the form been submitted, and if it has, then to do whatever's contained in here. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is get the form data. All right, so we're just going to have a variable called U, and it's going to equal the post value of username, which is just U in this case, and I did that to speed things up just a little bit. I'll go ahead and copy and paste these and correct these to the proper values. Okay, so once that's done, we will go through a short validation of the form. So we'll just say if string length of U is less than 5, then we'll just say error equals your username must be at least 5 characters. We'll say else if P2 does not equal P, which means our secondary password doesn't match our first password, then error will equal your passwords do not match. What we'll do, just in case they meet both of these here, we'll just do a period here, and that will append this to the string here. So in doing that, we should probably make these separate paragraphs. Okay, so if they pass this criteria here, then we're going to use an else statement and say that the form is valid and we want to connect to the database. And to do that, I'm just going to create a new variable called mysqli, and that's going to equal a new mysqli. And here we're going to put in our server name, which is localhost, the username, the password, and the database, which is test, and we can see that right here. The next thing I want to do is sanitize the variable, or the form data, I guess we could say. And to do that, we'll just use the same variable name. We're going to say U for username. That's going to equal mysqli. Real escape string, and we'll use the data from U. So the value that was submitted into our form under the U variable is going to be sanitized, which essentially just means it's going to strip any characters that can be used for SQL injection, and then we're going to reassign that back to the variable of U. Okay, so likewise up here, I can copy this data and use this code for the other variables. Okay, so in setting these up, I did realize that I had a typo up here. I had P3 instead of E, so if you're following along, then you can go ahead and make that correction as well. The next thing that I want to do is establish what our verification key is actually going to be. All right, to do this, I'm just going to create a variable called vKey, and that's going to be equal to an MD5 value, and I'm going to use the current timestamp, the Unix timestamp, which we can get from just typing in time and then appending the username to that. So it's going to be an encrypted value of the current timestamp with the username. This would be very difficult just to figure out, and I can show you what that actually looks like. So if I echo vKey, let me process my form here. We can see that this string is generated, and each time I refresh the page, that's going to change, and that's because the timestamp is changing every second, and that changes the entire string. Okay, so this will always be a unique number or a unique string here. So that's what we'll use for the verification. All right, so now it's time to actually insert the records into the database, but before I want to do that, I want to make sure that I encrypt my password. So P is going to equal MD5 of P. All right, so that's just going to create an MD5 hash of P. To actually do the insert itself, we're going to create a variable called insert, and this will equal MySQLi query, and we'll say insert into accounts username, password, email, and vKey, and the values will equal our username, our password, our email address, and our vKey. So just to do some checking, let's say if insert, which means it's true, then we'll echo out success. Else echo MySQLi error. So it will tell us if we have an error in our form. So let's go ahead and check this. And it says success. Let's take a look in the database. And we can see that we now have user ID 1, username is PHP Basics, my encrypted password, my email address, and here is my vKey. This shows the date that this was created, and my verified is set to 0. Okay, so now what we need to do is whenever the user successfully enters data into the database, we need to send an email to them with this verification code. So to do that, let's backtrack just a little bit here, and instead of just echoing out success, we can remove that and prepare our email. Okay, so the email function requires a few different parameters. First is to, and that's going to equal our email address. Our subject, which we can just say email verification. Our message itself, and the headers. Now headers refers to if there's going to be HTML inside of the email, who it's actually from, carbon copies, and things like that. Okay, but the message is really the important thing here. So just to keep this very plain and simple, I'm going to just say, I'm just going to provide the link. So this will be aref equals HTTP, oops, this should be a single quote, HTTP localhost, because we're just doing this all on localhost, registration/verify.php $vkey equals, and then we're going to use our vKey here, and we will just say register account. All right, so essentially what this is it's just sending them the link to the verification page, and it's going to be looking for the verification key that we sent in that account, and I'll show you how that works here in just a minute. Our from, on the other hand, or I'm sorry, our headers contains our from information, so we'll say from phpbasics@yahoo.com, because that's the email account that I've actually got set up in SendMail, and like I said, you can refer to that video that was provided at the beginning of this video. Now, in order to use HTML in our email, we also have to include this header information here, and you can copy and paste this. This is something that I typically just grab from a previous project, or you can search it as well, but you also have to provide the new line and the return carriage. Okay, So with that being said, if I was to send this successfully, then it should send me an email, but I need to send the user somewhere. And at this point, I will just use header, and I'm going to send them to the location of thankyou.php. Okay. Now, providing that everything is set correct here, then all I have to do is send the email itself. So to do that, I'm just going to use mail, not email. And the first parameter is to, and then subject, and then the message itself, and then our headers. In a perfect world, this should work, but we may run into some issues. So let's go ahead and reprocess our form. But first, what I need to do is remove this record here, and I'm just going to reprocess my form. Okay, so let's just refresh the page here, and I'm just going to send myself the email. And we can see it's thinking about it. And now it's sending me to the thank you page saying, thank you for registering. We have sent a verification to the email address that you provided. And I'll go and check that email here. Okay, so here is the email verification. And if I click on here, we can see that we have register account. Now, currently, this page does absolutely nothing. So let's go and work on that part next. Okay, so inside of our verify.php page, we need to check to see if that validation key is actually in the header or not. So what we'll do, we'll say if is set get vkey, then we can process verification. Else, we could just say die. Something went wrong. All right, so to process this, first we need to actually grab the data from that variable. So we'll say vkey is equal to the get value of vkey. And what I mean by the get variable is if we look at this address right here, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the verify link. Vkey equals this right here, okay? If this was not here, it's going to say something went wrong, okay? So if somebody tried to access the verify.php page without having a valid code, it's going to do this right here, okay? Now what we need to do is connect back to the database, and I'm just going to grab my connection from here, and we'll connect to the database. And what we want to do is a result set, and that's going to equal MySQLi query. And we're going to select verified and vkey from accounts where verified is 0 and vkey equals vkey, limit 1. And let me just check my database here to make sure that that is what that table is called, or this column is called, and it's verified. Now it says that there's nothing in here, but if I refresh, then we should see my account here. All right, and it's currently set verified to 0. So if that actually returns a value, then we need to do something. So we'll say if result set numRows is equal to 1, then we can validate the email. If it's not, then we could say echo this account is invalid or already verified. I don't know, something to that extent. All right, so to validate the email, which is saying whenever it tries to select verified and vkey where verified is 0 and the vkey equals my vkey, then we need to validate this and update that. So we're going to update is equal to MySQLi query. And we're going to update accounts set verified equals 1 where vkey equals vkey, limit 1. Okay, so now whenever the page gets the email account gets verified, the user will then be able to sign in normally. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to our verification page. Tell you what, let's go ahead and echo out. We'll say if update, then echo your account has been verified. You may now log in. Else, we'll just echo MySQLi error, which will help us identify what may have went wrong. Update account set verified equals 1, where vkey equals vkey, limit 1. So I have an error in my SQL syntax, and that is in the result set right here, where verified should be equal to 0. There we go. Let's try this again. Okay, so your account has been verified. You may now log in. And if we look here, our verified is 0. If we refresh, then our verified is now set to 1. So now let's hop on over into our login.php, and we're going to do the same thing that we did on the initial registration. We're going to have an error. This is going to equal null for now, but down here at the bottom, we'll go ahead and center this, and we'll echo out error. Okay, so likewise, we have the username and a password, which are represented by U and P. All right, so let's check to see if the form has been submitted. So the name of the form is submit. So we'll say if is set, the post value of submit. Then we will check to see if this user actually has a valid sign-on. So we'll say, let's go ahead and connect to the database first. So I will take this here, and then I will check to see if, well, first of all, let's get the variable. So let's get form data, and we'll say U is going to equal MySQLi real escape string of the post value of U. Since we're already connecting to the database, then we don't have to separate these out like we did before. So we're going to have U, and we're also going to have P for the password. And then we'll go ahead and get the encrypted value of that password, since that's how it's stored in the database. And that's just an MD5 value. Okay, so now let's query the database. We're just going to say result set equals MySQLi query select all from accounts where username equals U and password equals P. Limit 1. All right, so now we'll say if result set num rows does not equal 0, then process login. Else invalid credentials, and we'll say error is equal to the username or password you entered is incorrect. Okay. All right. So for the form, what we need to do is see if the account is validated. We know the username and password is correct, but we need to verify that this account has been verified. So to do that, what we'll do is we will just say row equals result set fetch a sock. And this will allow us to grab the value. So we'll say verified equals row verified. And this is going to tell this whether this is a yes or a no. Okay, so we'll say if verified is equal to 1, then continue processing. Else error equals this account has not yet been verified. What we can also do is get the email. We can also get the create date. I think that's what I called it. Let's see. Yep, create date. All right, so what we can do is this account has not yet been verified. An email was sent to email on date. All right, so let's go ahead and try to log in. So let's just do a fresh page here and make sure that we don't have any errors. So we'll just say Sean and then some dummy password. Username and password you entered is incorrect. So let me do PHP basics with the password that I put in. And nothing is going to happen. And that is good because that means that we have been verified. Now, if I go in and change my verified to 0, let's try this again and see what happens. This account has not been verified. An email was sent to phpbasics@yahoo.com on 2018, and it's going to show our timestamp. Let's make this a little bit more friendly. And what we can do is we can turn that into a more friendly format by using string to time. So we'll say date equals string to time date, and then what we'll do is date equals date, and we'll say let's see, month, day, and year of date. And now if we look at this again, it's going to show us November 4th, 2018, which is the current date. Okay, that just makes things a little bit easier. However, we can say continue processing. Okay, so we'll just echo. Typically, you would get forwarded onto like the members page or whatever, but for this, we'll just echo your account is verified and you can log in, or you have been logged. All right, so if we go back and change this value to 1 and save that, let's fix our syntax error here. Here we go. Your account is verified and you have been logged in. Now, like I said, technically or typically you would be sent to the members page, or it would show your name up here with a logout. That's all covered in my other login tutorial videos. So this concludes this video of how to create an email verification whenever you are doing registration. So I know this was a kind of a long video, but if you have any questions or anything's not working for you, feel free to revisit the other videos that talk about registration, login, and how to send emails. And if you have further questions, then feel free to leave a comment below. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. As always, stay creative.